Mating matters. It's why we do what we do. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh, a psychologist and relationship guru, and I've got a new podcast that explores the secret evolutionary motivation for human behavior. Mating Matters. Listen and subscribe at Apple Podcasts or on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This is Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Good morning and welcome, my friends. You are listening to Enjoy Incredible Health with me, your host. You know, I wish Rush wouldn't have taken that line already, your fuzzy, lovable little host. I would use that if I could, but anyway, so I am your host, Dr. David Vitko. I'm a chiropractic physician with 34 years experience, and now I can safely say, adding to my credentials, I am somewhat of a cancer expert, at least from the patient standpoint. So I've learned a lot over the last 2 grueling weeks of study and anguish and gut-twisting days and nights, and also relaxing vacation in Florida with my wife, which I dearly love, and I'll say more about that pretty soon. But, really happy to see Viking's smiling face this morning. You just would not believe, folks, how there is no guy on earth that can perk you up like Viking. You come in here, the guy's got a smile, got good things to say, no matter what, a lot of stress, whatever. He's cool, and he puts you at ease. So, a guy that's still a novice at this, been at it for a year now, but I still have to claim amateur status. But hopefully we're going to make it a good show today. And, wow, I have some great stuff to share with you. I have learned so much in the last 2 weeks. It's amazing how quickly you can learn when your life depends on what you're reading. And that's the feeling that I've had this last 2 weeks. And I have, as I always say to you, immersed myself in my choices for treatment for this esophageal cancer that I have. By the way, if you missed us the last week or so, last 2 weeks, I have been diagnosed with esophageal cancer. It hasn't been staged. I really haven't followed through with that. I had a PET scan, and the PET scan showed no metastasis at two weeks ago. So, in many ways, I think that what I'm doing is making a difference. At least symptomatically, I feel better. I'm not claiming any kind of like I'm headed toward a cure or anything, but it is better. And I'm going to give you critical information today, folks, that everybody needs to know about cancer. And it'll be in general terms. I'm not going into specifics on different cancers, except for the fact that esophageal cancer is the one that I studied the most. But many cancers have similarities in how the cells react and respond, and to treatment or lack of treatment and things like that, to diet, believe it or not. I do believe diet has a powerful influence on it. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. I'm sorry to focus on this, but it is something that I think is so important because as my friend Dr. Gabe Merkin, and by the way, my wife and I had an opportunity to sit down and have lunch with Dr. Merkin and his wife Diana while we were in Florida, and what a gem. Both of them are just amazing people. And, I know Dr. Merkin's 85. I'm not sure what Diana is, but they both look great. They both still bicycle 120, 150 miles a week. Just amazing people. Their energy levels and their minds are very sharp. And I am just so impressed with them. And it was our great pleasure to sit down and have lunch with them. And actually, I hesitated to do it, but Dr. Merkin, I did talk to him about my diagnosis, and he gave me some insight on what he thought, was the best route to go. And I greatly appreciate it. The guy is a gem and a gentleman, and his wife is a wonderful lady. So, and speaking of wonderful ladies, I have to say that my wife, I am so blessed. My wife, Nisi, and I spent 2 weeks in Florida, and, we spent a lot of time at the beach because part of what I wanted to do was to make sure that we enjoyed some time together. And it was in many ways the best 2 weeks we've ever spent because I think we've grown closer, and I guess things like this will do that to you. And but so we, I'm just so blessed to have somebody like Denise in my life. So I get that out of the way and regroup myself here, and I want to go on and I want to talk about what I've learned and Nisi's been so supportive. It's amazing. I spent probably the better part of my afternoons sitting at the computer reading scientific research, trying to avoid all the garbage on the internet, because let me tell you, everybody has a cure for cancer, and 99% of them have no scientific validity whatsoever. And so you have to be really careful what you go into. The one exception I will say about that may not have a lot of scientific backing, but I believe has a lot of power, and that is prayer. Because I have a deep belief in God, and as does my wife, and a lot of our family, and many people are supporting us with prayer, and that's powerful stuff. It really is. And, it's even if, and don't take this the wrong way, but even if there was no God and people prayed for you, that emotional power is incredible. But the fact that there is a God and that God does have influence over our lives is even more powerful. So, that's where healing comes from, I believe. And God has certainly influenced the path that I've chosen to treat my cancer. And I'm going to talk to you about that now. So, 2 weeks. We got down there on a Saturday evening. We got to spend Sunday just relaxing on the beach. Monday, I had a doctor's appointment, and it was at a freestanding clinic. And, I have mixed feelings about that, because I will say that one thing that the doctor said to me made me look more deeply into it and actually has influenced my choice of self-treatment. The doctor that we met with is borderline genius, or is genius in my opinion, but I wasn't real comfortable with the treatment scenario that he provided. There was a treatment that I was really interested in, which is this IPT, which is insulin potentiation therapy, which is a low-dose chemotherapy coupled with glucose and glucose, kind of starving your cancer cells of glucose and then giving some glucose with low-dose cancer chemotherapy. And, there's validity to it. The theory behind it has validity, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a medical doctor who would say so or admit that. And mainly because maybe they haven't looked at the possible theory behind it, maybe haven't given it a lot of thought. But also, don't forget, everyone that you talk to, their view is dictated by their education for the most part. So what they've read and what they've internalized as being the best treatment is what you're going to hear from them. And I found this out with the medical physicians that I've dealt with, and I've probably had 5 of them so far that I've gotten opinions from. And every one of their opinions, without exception, says, get your esophagus cut out, get radiation, and get chemotherapy now. And, I've never been one to go along with, things that are traditionally accepted as normal or perfect. It's not perfect. That treatment is not perfect. If they could promise me that would end the cancer and the cancer would never come back, and so maybe it's worth doing that. But I know that treatment results in a quality of life that is far less than what I'm willing to accept. And so in many ways, I've chosen to roll the dice with going a different route. I respect them for their knowledge, and their abilities are phenomenal. There's no question about it. But and I'm sorry to be grotesque about this, but to get your esophagus cut out and have your stomach pulled up into your throat, basically, and stitched to what's left of the esophagus, and then to not be able to swallow ever again for the rest of your life, however long that might be. And in general, it's a 5-year survival rate that they look at, and that improves your 5-year survival rate. So, even if you only make it 5 years before some kind of cancer reoccurs or a new cancer pops up, because they've done nothing to correct the situation in your body that allowed that cancer to start to begin with, then that treatment, to me, doesn't make sense. It's just not logical. It might buy you a couple of years at the most, 5 years, maybe longer, but what quality of life? And that's important to me. I feel good right now, folks. If you go on my Facebook page, I encourage you to do this. Go on Dr. David Vitko Facebook page. I'm not trying to get people to look at my page or anything, but if you want to see pictures of, and I'm not sure if I put it on that page or not for sure. I'll make sure I share it on that page. But you'll see that I look probably better than I have in 30 years. I look good. Now, some people would say, the old stud of Bubba's out there would say I look emaciated, but I don't. I feel really good, and my weight is the lowest it's been in a long time. But I feel actually very good, other than a tiny bit of chest pain when I eat, and occasional little bit of reflux into my lower esophagus, but nothing more. Other than the fact that the diet I'm following right now, which I'll share with you in a little bit, my energy is sapped right now, but it's on its way back up. I can tell there's improvement. I'm still exercising every day. You know, I'm going to get back to seeing patients every day starting tomorrow. And I am clear as a bell in my thoughts. And so I can't say that I feel badly at all. And if my quality of life could continue like this to the end, whenever that is, I'm happy as a lark. So I'm going to try to maintain this route. It's a little tough because I was pretty groggy the last 2-3 mornings getting up in the morning. And you know me, I'm usually up at 4:30, 5 o'clock to get ready for the show and come in. This morning I struggled to get up at 6:30. But I did, and I'm here because I really want to share with all of you. But there's so much to this whole thing. There's more than meets the eye. You know, when your doctor says, oh, we'll go ahead with this cancer treatment, what they don't tell you is that when they do the surgery, there's a good chance that some of the stem cells from the cancer has already traveled around your body. And there's a good chance that they've found a home somewhere in your body, and that somewhere down the road you're going to get a metastasis, or you're going to get, with certain cancers, and you're going to get possibly other cancers that'll spring up sometime in the coming months or years. And when you get, for instance, for me, to get the esophagus cut out and then do radiation in that area to make sure they kill all the cancer cells in that area, and they do chemotherapy to make sure they kill all the cancer cells, which is a pretty tall order, and that chemotherapy and radiation both combine to kill a lot of healthy cells, which is why many people feel so sick when they go through that. I feel great right now, folks. I don't want to put my immune system in that depleted situation where it's hard to keep it working very well, to keep yourself healthy, and to prevent those future cancers from coming up. My friend Dr. Merkin made a point of this, and, you know, he's board certified in immunology. He says, David, he said, you know, we all have cancer cells in our body all the time. The thing that keeps them from growing and becoming cancerous and creating a tumor and spreading is your immune system's ability to keep them in check. And it's only when your immune system becomes depleted in some way, which they really don't fully understand, that cancer has a chance to expand and grow. So I'm pleading with you folks that have not been diagnosed with cancer, who feel good, who think their life is fine. If you're a little bit overweight, you know, and you're eating an unhealthy diet, you need to change, because that day of reckoning may come. Mine came out of the blue, and it was like a cold smack in the face. Now, I was eating a really healthy diet at the time, but I spent enough years eating a poor diet and maybe drinking a little too many beers and things like that over the years that conspired to eventually suppress my immune system to possibly let this take hold. So if you're feeling good and you have no symptoms now, you need to do things to improve your diet. Increasing the plant-based food in your diet is very important. And, you know, it's okay to do some meat-based things here and there, but you want to limit that because there's a lot of statistics that show that's not the best approach. But, and you're going to be, after I tell you what I'm doing here in the second part of the show, you're going to be going, wow, that's a complete turnabout. But I'm going to explain how this works and maybe the weakness that cancer cells have and how you could help your immune system fight it. And this is what I've chosen to do. I'm not trying to tell anybody they should take the approach that I'm taking. It is such a personal thing to decide which way to go. They're literally, your life hangs in the balance. So it's a big decision. And it's almost like there's no turning back in my mind once you make that decision. But we'll get to more of that here in a little bit. But so those first 2 weeks that we spent in Florida, I went to the doctor on Monday after we got there on Saturday. I found a Cleveland Clinic physician in Weston, Florida. Dr. Tolga Aram, tremendous guy, tremendous doctor. But he gave me the same story that all the medical doctors did. Get it cut out, get radiation, get chemo. And he was setting me up at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland for when we got back. But don't think I'm going that route. But anyway, he's a tremendous guy. And he got me in the next day appointment. Can you imagine? Cleveland Clinic in Weston, Florida. Busy place. Wonderful people. Just like Southwoods was here. I got nothing but good to say about the folks at Southwoods. They do a great job. And Dr. Stevie Vaughn. And, but it was tremendous. It was a good visit down there in Cleveland Clinic. Of course, I haven't got my bill yet, but maybe I'll change my tune. I don't know. But it was worth it. So we drove from where we stayed on the Gulf Coast. We drove 4 hours down to Weston, and which was a nice drive. I never made that before. Got to go across Alligator Alley there, and interesting trip. And then got to see Dr. Aram one day, and that day we finished driving over to see my daughter on the east coast of Florida. Spent time with her and my son-in-law. Wonderful people, two of the best people I know on earth. And besides my son and his girlfriend, both wonderful people too. And so we had a great visit down there. Plus, both my kids came up to visit on that Sunday, the first Sunday we got there. So it was very fulfilling, and I really enjoyed it. And, every minute you get to spend with family after a diagnosis like this is something that you cherish. And it means a lot. But okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is the tremendous outpouring of support that we've gotten from family and friends. I can't thank you all enough. I'm just overwhelmed. It is Denise and I both are. You guys have gone above and beyond the call of duty, and I can't say thank you enough. But thank you. So I want to get on to this thing about cancer, and I want to get to the most important part of it. I'm going to get started, and then after we take the halfway break, I'm almost at the bottom of the hour, which is amazing. But I'm going to get started on this cancer thing, where I see cancer's weakness from the studies that I've done. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek that I call myself a cancer expert, folks. Come on. There's people that devote their careers to this, and I'm going to mention a few of them in the second half who are well worth watching their videos and reading their papers and things online. These are brilliant people who are not in the limelight, and you need to read some of their material. But one other person I want to thank, my brother Andy, who's also a chiropractor up in Medina, who has been tremendous in his support of my thinking on the scientific end of things. Andy's far brighter than me, in my opinion, and I've bounced a lot of things off of him, and together we've come to some conclusions which I love, because we are very like-minded in how we think on this whole thing. But so I want to get to cancer's weakness. So, and I talked about this a little bit 2 weeks ago when I talked about the cancer thing, that if there is a weakness in cancer, it is that cancer thrives on glucose. Cancer thrives on sugar. And for all of you out there that love eating candy bars and cakes and ice cream and things like that, and things that overeating and holding more weight than you should as a sign of overeating daily, those are all things that increase your blood glucose. And when your blood glucose or your blood sugar tends to be on the high side, you are giving cancer an opportunity to thrive in your body. And if you already have cancer, you might want to hear what I have to say in the second half, because I'm going to talk about my plan to reduce cancer's food and to starve cancer as much as possible. A lot of medical doctors will say, no, that's not possible. I believe there is a small possibility in a narrow niche that could make a huge difference. And I can tell you, folks, in 10 days of doing this specific diet that I'm doing, and I'm not making any claims to any cures or anything like that, but I am already swallowing better. I have less pain than I had. When I would walk, like any kind of distance, like a couple of miles for exercise, I would get this pain across my mid-back. It felt like my back was breaking, and underneath my shoulder blades and under my chest in the front. That's all gone now. That pain is all gone now. And the only pain that I have is a little bit of discomfort in my chest after I eat, and that it feels like irritation of the inside of the esophagus. And so I'm not saying that anything's physically changed in there, because most medical doctors would say, nah, it's not going to happen. But look, something is changing, because that radiating pain that I had is gone. And so that's improved. I still feel good. I still walk. I still have energy. I can now eat better than I did. I'm eating solid food, which I wasn't able to do 2 weeks ago. Something's changing, and I'm not going to make any great claims, because that's about the time God smacks you down and you go, yeah, I guess it wasn't. But I'm just telling you that I'm a bit of a scientist. I look at things very objectively, and I don't fall into that subjective, oh, yeah, I'm doing better. I'm not going to psych myself out on it. There's no future in that. But when I see objective change, well, it is subjective still. Down the road, we're going to check this and see if there's objective change. Objective change that can be seen by others. But for right now, subjectively, I know things have improved significantly. I went out to dinner several times over the past week and had no issue swallowing. I think that's pretty powerful stuff, and that gives me hope. And I think real hope is something that you should cling to. And there's no other way to look at it. You don't want to put blinders on and be an idiot about it. But if you don't focus on your goal and you don't stick to a strategy and you look at everything that's coming along as being some kind of a possibility, and you should look at this treatment, that treatment, you're going every which way and there's no focus. I've chosen the direction I'm going to go, and I'm going to stick with that unless something dramatic changes the picture. And for right now, I'm moving ahead because something seems to be changing for the better. So remember, I said glucose, sugar, is cancer's chosen fuel. As a matter of fact, glucose and an amino acid called glutamine are really the only fuels that cancer can thrive on. And so there's a way to shift the energy available to our cells in our body in which our healthy cells can still thrive and use this alternative energy, but this alternative energy does not work for cancer cells. And those are ketones. And now everybody knows I'm going to talk about ketosis in a keto diet, which really has been out of bounds for me for the last 5 years of my life. But God has a way of bringing new thought to our minds, and man, this hit me like a ton of bricks. This is Dr. David Vitko. You're listening to Enjoy Incredible Health, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Thanks, folks.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Alrighty, we're back. I only have so much time, so I don't want to spend a lot of time listening to great music. I did listen to that music many times on the beach while I was walking for exercise. By the way, I anywhere from 2 to 4 miles a day on the beach, which is not an easy thing. It's harder on the beach than on pavement. And I did it at a brisk pace. And I always do somewhere between 20 and 40 push-ups a day. And now that I'm home and I have weights available again, which I just have a few dumbbells, I don't have much, got a chin-up bar, I'm going to get back to that and work really hard at it to keep my muscle tone up, as I have lost a little bit more weight, and I'm going to try to stifle that. So I'm going to get into the diet that I'm following here soon, and I'm going to talk a little more about the science behind the glucose and limiting glucose to the cancer cells. First, I want to tell you something, and this just reminded me when I heard the commercials, was the commercial for Patrick Fry and fry painting. Let me tell you something, folks. Patrick pressure washed my house while I was gone, and I'm flabbergasted. I mean, it is incredible. There's no way I would have done that good of a job myself. And, you know, he just does a fantastic job, and the guy, just everything he does reeks of quality and at a fair price, at a good price. And so don't hesitate to call Patrick Fry. I don't have the number in front of me, but it was on the commercial. We hear it again probably at the end. So Patrick Fry painting, and I highly recommend them. So the other thing was the commercial for my health restoration program. People probably are out there going, oh, yeah, well, how'd that work for you? Well, let me tell you how that worked for me. Every doctor I've seen, hands down, no question, has said, number one, I don't get how this happened to you. And number two, they're all amazed at the health I'm in for a 60-year-old. And so, you know, if you're looking at the bigger picture and you say, well, if there's a possibility I could get cancer or some other illness, wouldn't you rather be in the best health you can be when you get that, when that happens? If it's something that's outside of your body's ability to keep in check, doesn't it make sense to have the best health you can have in that situation? Hell yes. So, you know, I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, well, you know, eating a good diet is not important because you're going to get it anyway. Yeah, well, it may make the difference between survival and not. And I think that, and all the doctors I spoke with said, I have a far better chance of surviving this. Of course, they all want me to go the radical route, but, you know, I have a far better chance of surviving this than most. And speaking of which, here's one of the things that I base my opinion of the treatment that I've decided to pursue for this. So I knew a doctor locally who actually had esophageal cancer and got the esophagectomy, where they cut the esophagus out and pull the stomach up and attach it and go through you got to have basically a feeding tube for a period of time until that heals. You can't eat, you know, while it's healing in there. And had the radiation and the chemo and basically beat the cancer, but died shortly thereafter because his immune system was so suppressed that it wasn't able to keep infection away. And he died from infection. That's not going to be me. Yeah, I'm not going that route. And maybe he was in good health at the time, maybe not. I don't know, but I'm not taking that chance. If I have a chance to keep all my parts, the parts God gave me that all have a specific reason and possibly way beyond the reason that we in health and in science think that they have, maybe there's more to it than we even know. You know, then I'm going to keep those parts, and I'm going to do the best I can to shore up my defenses and get my body to defeat what's going on. And part of that is psychological, too, folks. The prayer thing comes into it, and your outlook every day. And let me tell you, when I wake up in the morning and I feel like something the cat dragged in, that's all I can do to kick myself in the butt, get in the shower and get going, do some push-ups, you know, get moving, have a cup of coffee. I have a cup of coffee or two in the morning now, and I find that caffeine gives me enough of a boost to get going and to stay positive. You know, so if that's what it takes and it doesn't irritate my problem and there's no reason that I shouldn't have it physiologically, that's the route I'm going. And it's working for me. So I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of it right now. And so you know why I'm going this route. Glucose is the fuel that really keeps cancer moving and gives cancer the fuel it needs to grow. And so I'm going to do my best to decrease the amount of glucose that cancer cells have available to them. And it just so happens that there's some research that speaks exactly to that. And it's considered theory, get this, even though the guy who developed the theory did so clear back, I believe, in 1925. It was in the 1920s, back when the dinosaurs still roamed the earth. And he actually won a Nobel Prize for this back in the days when the Nobel Prize meant a whole lot. And so, his name was Otto Warburg, and he was from Germany. And he proved that cancer cells need sugar to thrive and to grow. And that by decreasing the sugar that's available to them, it stops their growth and potentially kills them. So this is Otto Warburg back in the 20s. Now, it just so happens that I came across this guy named Dr. Thomas Seyfried. Write this down if you have cancer or you know someone who has cancer. And I'm not telling anyone to go this route or to choose this route, but for me, it's the route I choose to go. I think it gives me the best chance of not only survival, but also maintain my immune system and to thrive. So Dr. Thomas Seyfried, Seyfried. That's Seyfried. Now, the guy wrote a textbook, basically. You're not going to buy the textbook, probably, unless you're a physician or somebody. If you're a physician, I highly recommend I'm going to get the textbook and I'm going to study it. But he has a couple of videos online, and the one that I saw was a speech that he gave. It was tremendous. The guy has tremendous credibility. He is a cancer researcher at Boston College. He's a PhD. So, I don't want to hear any crap from all the people in the medical field. Oh, there's no science behind that. There's a lot of science behind this. Yeah, it's theory. It's not proven. It is. He has proved in small instances that brain cancer can be stopped and even reversed by this method, by starving the cancer of glucose. And if they can do, I think it was astrocytoma, which is a tremendously aggressive brain cancer. And if he can prove that, then, and he mentions in his work that it's quite possible that other cancers would respond as well. He's not making any huge claims, but because all cancers, nearly all cancers, and I believe that all in many ways, have a predilection, they prefer glucose as their fuel. And there's another little fuel that goes along with it, which is glutamine, which is an amino acid, and I'll talk about that. There's one reason you don't want to eat more protein than you really need every day. And so I've calculated mine out. I know I need between 50 and 60 grams of protein a day, and I'm working very hard to stay at that or just below it. And that keeps the glutamine levels down as well. So how do you decrease the glucose in your blood? Well, for one thing, you need to test every day and see where your glucose is. And so really 10 days ago, I started doing this. I bought a little glucose monitor. I spent $100 for a monitor and test strips, and I also bought these keto strips. Now, the keto strips you just use urine to test it. But there's a blood-based test you can do too, and I'm going to get that this week because it's a little bit more accurate. But for about 9 days now, I've been in ketogenesis. So my body is using ketones for energy more than glucose. There's still a little bit of glucose production in the liver. But I take in so few carbs now, so few carbohydrates, that I have robbed my body of the ability to produce a lot of glucose. Now, people would say, well, how's that work? I mean, your brain runs on glucose. It is true. But your brain cells can thrive equally as well on ketones. And ketones are another form of energy that brain cells actually use very handily. And all the healthy cells in your body can use very well. But cancer cells cannot use ketones except to a tiny degree for energy. So it robs cancer cells of their ability to grow. So the key is and what I've adapted to is this ketogenic diet. So you can call it the Atkins diet if you want, but I call it the Atkins diet on steroids. And it doesn't mean you're eating a lot more bacon, grease, and fat, although I'll admit there are some animal products in my diet now. It's funny what, sickness like this and wanting to live can make you do, because that would have been totally antithetical to what I believe. But mainly I use good fats. And I'm trying to use a lot of, olive oil and avocado oil and, many things that are good fats. Avocado is a huge one. Nuts and seeds and those kinds of things to keep my fat intake up. So I'm striving for 90% of my diet to come from fat. Let me tell you, folks, if there's a reason why people don't adopt this diet to try this, even along with the cancer treatment they're getting, conventional treatment, it's because it's a challenge. So this week, I wasn't able to so much where I was because I didn't have all the tools, but now I've got a nice little digital scale in my kitchen. I can weigh my food. I can be very precise with what I'm taking in and to what percentages and things. And so I'm going to get in this treatment zone that Dr. Seyfried talks about and to what is the most effective to stop cancer growth. Now, I've been on this ketogenic diet for 10 days now. The first day I fasted one day, and that kicks you in because I had been eating so little food for so long. One day of fasting kicked me into ketogenesis very quickly. And so my ketone levels in my urine were substantially moderately high. And so one day of fasting put me right into it. Usually it takes 3 days of eating a high-fat diet to get you into ketosis. But so within one day I did. So 9 days I've been in ketosis. And I'm telling you that my symptoms are changing in a positive way. Now, I'm not making any great claims, and I'm not telling anybody, go do this because it's going to fix your cancer. I won't do that. It's a highly personal thing, and it's highly speculative on my part, but it's the path that I've chosen to try. And if I'm on the air for another year or two, you'll know that it was that choice that was the discerning moment in my life that made the difference. So it's a tough choice, because it's almost like do or die at that point. You're making a decision, and you're either going to stick with it or you're going to falter along the way. I don't know. But I feel very committed to this just because of the positive things I've seen so far. So the hardest part is eating enough fat to keep your weight up and to stop the weight loss. And so that's something I've got to do, because it's a fine line in limiting total number of calories, because calorie restriction is also helpful, but not losing substantial amounts of weight. If I can get it to where I lose 1 or 2 pounds a month for a couple of months, I'll accept that. But I have to slow the weight loss down. So that takes a lot of planning, dietary planning, and I plan to do that these coming weeks. So Dr. Thomas Seyfried, you put Dr. Thomas Seyfried video in your search line online, and I will post a link to that on both my sites, on drdavidvitko.com, and I'll also put it on drvitkohealth.com, which is the site for this radio show, so you can link to it, because I'm telling you, if you watch this with an open mind, and it's not so scientific the average person can't understand it, you might need to watch it twice. I've already watched it twice, and I understand exactly what he's talking about. But it's something that'll change your view. And his view is the cancer is not as much a genetic issue as it is a metabolic issue. There we go. If any MDs or nurses are listening to this show, they're, oh no, well, it's been proved that cancer is genetic. Maybe. Maybe not. When you watch this and you learn about the effect the mitochondria, the energy manufacturer in your cells, has on production or lack of production, and the research that Dr. Seyfried and others have done in this regard, and you don't come away saying that's possible, then you've got such a closed mind that you'll never accept a different view of things. This is not a conspiracy theory thing, but I want you to think about this. The average cancer patient contributes over $500,000 to the medical profession and the pharmaceutical industry, in the treatment industry in general, over the course of their cancer before they die. $500,000 per person. There's a lot of people that have cancer every year. That's big money. And they are all invested in this genetic issue and the genetic research. And you know what? A lot of the genetic stuff that's come out so far, research-wise, has failed. And there might be one or two little instances where there's a change, but I'm sorry, I fail to be impressed by that. And I think that there's a lot of room for looking at the metabolic end of things. And that gives us the possibility of changing that picture on our own. Now, don't you think that's worth taking a look at? Try to be open-minded, but don't fall into the traps of these charlatans and the people selling snake oil. This is Dr. David Vitko. I'm going to be back in a couple of minutes to finish up. You're listening to Enjoy Incredible Health. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Okay, we only have a few minutes, and I got a few things I want to get through. And so, look, folks, I was just sitting here thinking, if you're diabetic, there is no reason that you should be living with high blood glucose. You need to adjust your diet. Don't do it flippantly. Make sure you get somebody to help you that understands this. But get your blood glucose down, because when you live with high blood glucose and your insulin is fluctuating all the time, that's just ripe for other disease processes to start in your body, specifically, tripping over my tongue, specifically cancer. But there are other things too, and it's hard on your pancreas, and it's hard on all the cells in your body. And you need to get a grip on that and get your glucose under control. I'm working fervently now, and I'm very healthy otherwise. I'm working fervently. My glucose only goes up to 93 after a meal, which is phenomenal. Typically they say, well, after a meal you can go from 130 to 160 or 180. I keep mine down because I'm really working specifically to fix this problem. But if you have diabetes, that's the little sign. That's the big sign. That's the elephant in the room. You need to do something to get your glucose down. And I see patients do that all the time. You can do it with any number of diets, but you need to get to work on it. And so, mainly the biggest thing that I've arrived at over time is the most important thing is eat slightly less than you think you need every day. If you don't feel a little bit hungry every day, you're overfeeding your body. And, my brother Andy and I had this conversation about this. Your cells in your body are all bathed in water. They have water all around them. That's their environment. And if that environment's all choked with extra food, extra energy, and waste products and things that your body can't get rid of, you're just choking your cells and you're creating ill health. Eating a better diet, working to get that glucose down, and being thoughtful about how you eat and decreasing the amount of you. If you're overweight, you should see a little bit of weight loss every week. If you're not, you got to get to work. If you don't, there's bad things waiting down the road. Don't wait for that to happen. So look, this is Dr. David Vitko. Thanks so much for listening. Next week I want to go into this a little bit more because an hour is way too short to get through 20 years worth of work that I did in 2 weeks. But we're going to be back next week. If you want to call me, my office is 330-482-9550. Feel free. I'll be happy to talk to you. Thanks, folks. Have a great weekend.